I wanted to give you a tour of my garden. It is a beautiful evening and I am harvesting garlic. I'm also planning to make fried rice tomorrow, so I'm gonna show you what I'm harvesting to add to our fried rice and just talk about all of the things that are happening in my garden right now, including a few sad accidents. That happens, that's part of gardening. I am gardening in Center County, Pennsylvania, and it is early July. This is bee balm, and you can see the bees are all over it. It is alive with bees, and I also saw quite a few bees on the marshmallow. It took me a moment. This is marshmallow here. It's really tall and it's got these beautiful white flowers on it, and I've seen a variety of bees on there as well. There's a honeybee right there. And this is my insect bed right here. So mostly perennials, all planted specifically for insects and beneficial insects and pollinators. While we're back here, I'm going to show you, this is the start of my food forest or my perennial garden. I have 3 raspberry plants in here from a local nursery, and strawberries, and then chives on each corner. Now I do have annuals in here filling in right now. Like, these are all Jubilee watermelon that are doing really great. They'll take off and have gigantic, like, baby-sized watermelon. Not baby watermelon, like watermelon the size of a baby. They're gigantic. So I'm gonna keep planting annuals in here to have the soil cover and suppress weeds while I establish the perennials. I have squash under there that I covered because of cucumber beetles. But over here in the main garden, I've been harvesting a lot, and we're kind of in between. Spring garden has been mostly harvested, but I haven't started planting my fall garden yet, so there's a lot of empty space. But that's actually a good thing because I have space I can plant into. These are our onions. Our onions are doing really well and have gotten to the point where I've started harvesting them as I want to use them. This one's a pretty nice size, so I'm actually gonna harvest that for our fried rice tomorrow. I can't remember the exact name. It's something like Long of Florence. So that is the shape that that onion is supposed to be. And that's about the biggest they will get. So we're gonna eat and enjoy that one. Beautiful head of lettuce. Some of our lettuce got a little bitter. Some of it is still delicious. It depends on the variety, when I planted it, and things like that. Some of these that have bolted have a little bit more bitter, stronger flavor. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that. It's just not always the best flavor that you want, but you can still eat some of it. I planted some beets in here. They struggled a little bit because I planted them and then didn't water them for a few days, so that was oops on my part, but they're hanging in there, and we got some rain today, which was good. And I will probably water tomorrow if we don't get more rain. We got some lettuce coming along here, and this area is nice because it gets a little bit of shade with the cabbage there. I also have some sunflowers growing there. I'm actually gonna take that's cauliflower. I'm gonna take the cauliflower out soon. We just started having a ton of problems with cabbage worms, and those were behind anyway. They're not looking great, so I'm probably gonna just compost those. but there's still some beautiful lettuce. So you absolutely can grow lettuce all season long. It just takes some trial and error, learning curve, a little bit of learning curve. I do lose some lettuce every year, but I plant a lot, and I plant a couple different varieties, so I always have some that's successful. This was a volunteer squash plant of some sort. Since I was having so much trouble with my squash from cucumber beetles, I let it grow, so we'll see what we get. This tomato I'm training back into the trellis a little bit, but the tomatoes are doing great. They are loving this weather. We're gonna come back to tomatoes in a minute. I wanna show you something on one of the other tomato plants. This Yeti nasturtium, look at that. Beautiful yellow flowers. And you can see I've been tucking lettuce in everywhere, especially places that get more shade. This, if you go back and you watch the video a few weeks ago, that is one of the tiny struggling squash plants that was barely hanging on. But this variety is a little more resistant to cucumber beetles, and all three plants actually survived, and that one there is doing really well. The other two are hanging on and starting to take off, and I actually have some squash down there, which is great. So sometimes it's just trying the right varieties, planting enough times, because there was several other squash varieties I planted at the same time that did not survive. I do have two cabbage here. They're getting hit pretty hard by the cabbage worms, but I've been pinching those off whenever I see them, trying to save those too. Again, lots more lettuce because we eat a lot of lettuce, and I like to have enough going that we can always have some or an extra. This was another volunteer here. Again, it was a volunteer. It outgrew and survived the cucumber beetles, letting it go. I think it is a cucumber. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks to me like a cucumber. So we'll see what we get from that. There's a pink lady beetle there. That's a friend in the garden. Another succession of beets here. They're doing really well because I got those back in the ground back when we were still getting regular rain. They're doing really well. This is a Tiny Tim tomato. We actually harvested a few Tiny Tim tomatoes last night from the plants we have over by the greenhouse. They're not in the greenhouse, they're just by the greenhouse, and they are already ripe, which is always exciting to get tomatoes this early. I'm gonna put my onion here with, these are some beets that I harvested earlier. So that's kind of what's going on in that bed. With this space that's available, I'm going to plant some more beans. I have some more cucumbers and squash. It actually seems like we're getting a little bit of a reprieve from the cucumber beetles right now. I think they're in between life cycles. So I'm gonna plant some more squash and cucumbers out. And then of course I've got more successions of lettuce, beets, and kohlrabi. And then in a few weeks I'll be planting a lot of fall crops. So having some space open is nice. The only downside to that is that the weeds grow a little bit faster when the soil's not covered. So I ran my hoe through that area earlier. I've been harvesting our garlic. I'll also use some garlic in our fried rice tomorrow. We love garlic. And I started harvesting this bed of garlic. This is Amish garlic, that's the variety name. And this is where I was interplanting garlic. So there are a lot of things you can just plant directly after you've harvested your garlic, but to maximize space, I like to do some interplanting and to plant some things into my garlic before I actually take it out. And so I'm going to show you a few of the things that I've planted in there, along with how I harvest garlic. So I had planted these squash here. You can actually see those are squash bug eggs, so I will scrape those off when I have 2 free hands. These are cucumbers here. I had those covered with insect fabric until they got pretty big, and then I uncovered them so that they could start climbing the trellis, and that's why they are doing okay. And I did see I have one tiny little cucumber here, hopefully more coming along. Oh yep, I see another one there. So sometimes with pests, it's a matter of just getting the plants big enough before you uncover the plant, and then at that point they can outgrow and survive the pests. So when I harvest my garlic, I do not wait until the plants turn brown. I've found that that often causes more problems. So usually once we get to the beginning of July, and again, this is based on my gardening experience, we get to the beginning of July, I start harvesting a bulb every so often, to see how the bulbs are doing, the size. We'll eat a few, just again, we love fresh garlic. And I also watch for signs of any damage to the bulb, any pests like the allium leaf miner. If I see any issues, I pull them right away. Otherwise, I wait and see, you know, when they have a really nice bulb size. And one of the reasons the leaves can be deceiving is because if you have rust, or if you have other problems or other things going on with your garlic, and depending on the weather, the leaves can be really brown or they can be really green. And so I go, you know, usually the first 2 weeks in July, somewhere in there, based on how the bulbs look, I start harvesting. I just grab down near the soil and gently pull. If they don't come when you gently pull, you might want to use a fork to carefully loosen the soil around them and then pull them out. And I just shake the soil off of them and lay them here in the grass until I have them all harvested. And then I will cure them in one of our outdoor buildings, out of the sun, but where they get good airflow. Now, as I'm pulling the garlic, you can see I've got this basil plant. I've got several squash plants that were already planted in here. And now they're really starting to take off and take up space. So it's perfect that the garlic is coming out. Sometimes you don't always get your timing right. And so sometimes plants might be really big. Or like these carrots, I could have actually planted sooner because they're really small, but that's okay. That's part of succession sowing. And you can see there is some variation in the bulb size of the garlic. That's totally normal, but look at that one. That is a nice large bulb of garlic. I've got a pepper plant here. There's another pink lady beetle down there. They're good guys. And then over here, I had interplanted beans. So you can see the beans here going through. They could use a little bit more room and a little bit more sunshine right now. The garlic and the broccoli kind of took over a little bit, but now that I'm taking those out, the beans will really be able to bush out and grow. I've also got some brassicas in here, but as I mentioned, we've had a lot of trouble with cabbage worms, so I've been pulling a lot of brassicas and pinching a lot of worms. They don't damage kohlrabi terribly bad in my experience, but I do find them on there, and so I pinch them off. But I wanted to show you, I cut the main heads off of my broccoli a few weeks ago, and they were tiny heads, but delicious. So I let the plants keep going, and they produced side shoots, which are incredible. I have more side shoots than I got from the main heads. So I've got all of these beautiful side shoots off of one broccoli plant. So I'm harvesting broccoli in July from these side shoots, and I have a whole bunch more over here that I'm gonna harvest, and we might grill those or add them to salads, or maybe our fried rice. There's more over there. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut these side shoots, check the plants and see how they look, but I'm probably, at this point, I'll probably cut the side shoots and then pull the broccoli, just because of the cabbage worm pressure, and to make space for more and new crops to come in. But I'm really excited because that is a nice harvest of broccoli. But back over here to the garlic bed a minute. So I'll go through and I'll harvest all of this garlic, and then in this bed it's really already planted, so the squash will take over this end. I have a row of carrots, peppers, beans, and kohlrabi at that end. I might have a little bit of space that I can tuck in some lettuce, maybe tuck in some beet transplants as I get those. But this bed will be still very full even after I harvest the garlic. I'll show you a few other spaces in a moment where all there was garlic. I harvested that, and now I have empty bed space. So kind of two ways to do that. I wanted to come back to tomatoes and show you these beautiful tomatoes. These are black strawberry heirloom tomatoes. They are one of my favorites. They are larger than a cherry tomato. They're like a 1 to 2 ounce tomato, and they get just a beautiful pink, purple, green coloring. And sometimes when you grow the crazy colored tomatoes that don't turn just red, it can be a little intimidating to know when to harvest them, especially if that's the first time you've grown multicolored tomatoes. So there's two ways that you can typically tell when a tomato is ready to be harvested, and one is the coloring. So if you see right now, these are really shiny, and typically when a tomato is ready to harvest, it gets a little bit more of a dull appearance to it, and you'll just notice the colors slightly change. So if you're looking at your tomatoes every day, you will notice this. You'll be like, it's a little more dull, the color is slightly different. But then the other thing that you can do is you can just gently touch the tomato. If it feels firm, it's not ripe. But when you touch it, and I don't mean squeeze it, just gently touch it, and it should give and feel juicy. And those are the two best ways to tell if a tomato is ripe, is by that slight change in color. Whatever the color is, it'll get kind of dull, and then feeling them ever so slightly to see if they feel juicy and ready to eat. All right, so this is one area that I just harvested garlic from. This was Georgian Fire. Oh, I see I missed one back there. I'll grab that. I did plant a pepper and dahlias in there, but now I'll have more space, especially once I take out the broccoli. I'll have space to plant more things in there. So bush beans, squash, kohlrabi, beets. I'm probably gonna take a break from brassicas until I plant my fall garden in early August, and I'll cover them with row covers at that point. But yeah, summer squash, beans, cucumbers. Armenian cucumbers are great because they do better in the heat. They're actually a melon. that you eat like a cucumber. So I may plant some Armenian cucumbers, lettuce transplants, chard. There's a wide variety of things that you can still plant and transplant. I also have some sunflowers I'm gonna sow. I have some zinnia transplants I'm gonna put in for some more flowers. So there are lots of options for things that you can plant. It's not too late to put in some annual herbs like basil, and of course you can put in perennials if you want to add things like chives to your garden. Now is a totally fine and actually great time to plant perennial herbs in your garden as well. So I also have a space over here where I pulled garlic a few weeks or 2 weeks ago. My earlier variety I pulled, but I messed up. I planted some pickling cucumbers in here and I didn't get them watered soon enough, and you can see they're not looking so hot. They're probably not gonna make it. I may just pull them out and put something different in there. But again, that was that was my fault. That happens sometimes. Look at that, Matt's wild cherry tomatoes, a whole bunch of them growing on there, and the tomatoes are climbing the trellis like crazy. There's a lot to be said for leaving volunteers in your garden. This was a volunteer sunflower. So beautiful, so fun to have one blooming. And this is the dill I planted back in March. That's blooming, and I let it bloom for beneficial insects and then also to use for dill pickles. Over here, sadly, our peas are pretty well done for the year, but we've got a really good harvest off of them. We've been eating off of them for quite a while, and now I will pull those out. I actually have, you can't really see them, but I actually have tomatoes. They're struggling a little bit because of the shade. There they are, and a lightning bug. But I have 2 tomatoes there that I will train into the trellis as soon as I remove the peas. I'm actually going to do that tonight. More of our onions there. I'm going to let these go a little bit yet. Some more cabbage that I've been keeping an eye on for cabbage worms. And another volunteer sunflower. It looks like a branching sunflower. It's got one main flower and then a whole bunch of smaller ones coming. So that's super exciting. And then this bed of garlic here, I will also harvest, and that bed I will prep with a new layer of compost. And then that's one place that I'm planning to put in my fall brassicas, and I will cover the entire bed with insect covering. Insect covering is not my favorite thing. I don't really like it, but it can be a very useful tool, and I would much rather deal with insect netting than pesticides or other more harmful methods of dealing with pests. So I don't spray anything in my garden, even organic pesticides, so I will use row covers to cover a bunch of my fall brassicas in that bed. Over here, we've been harvesting beets here for the last 2 months. I have 3 left that I'm gonna let get a little bit larger, and then I'll have some space to plant more in there. And then this has just become an interplanting of lettuce. This is a variegated fish pepper, which is gorgeous. I highly recommend you try growing those. I just harvested a bunch of chard here that I'll also put in our fried rice right at the end. And then this is a variegated salmon Alaska nasturtium. So many beautiful things in the garden. Alyssum and kohlrabi, which I think I have some other kohlrabi, but I think this is one of the larger ones. I think I will go ahead and harvest a kohlrabi to also add to our stir fry. Just trying to figure out the best way to get to it with one hand. One thing with kohlrabi is it stores well. So I like to harvest things when we are ready to eat them, or as close to that as possible, so that they're fresh. But I do know that with kohlrabi, if you trim it and keep it in a moist bag in your refrigerator, it will keep for several weeks that way, or in a damp root cellar. Look at that thing. Kohlrabi is certainly crazy looking. So the leaves will go in the compost pile or to our composting worms, and then this bulb is the part that we will eat, and I'll probably just dice it up and add it to our fried rice. Or last night we had it diced up and sauteed with bacon and garlic. That's probably my favorite way to eat kohlrabi. Really good. All right, so that is what's going on in the garden. Again, a lot is coming out, but a lot is going in. We're eating a lot from the garden, which is great. As I mentioned, I'm using garlic, onion, kohlrabi, maybe some of the broccoli for our fried rice. And of course, local pastured eggs will go in there, along with some local pork. So that's one of our favorite meals to eat in the summer, and then have leftovers for lunch the next day. We've been eating a lot of salads with meat on the grill because, again, that's quick. And in even this small space, there is so much to eat, so much to plant, so much to harvest. Having a space this size is sometimes feels small, sometimes feels like a lot of space to take care of, which is always why I recommend you kind of start small and then grow your garden slowly and see what size works well for you in the place you are in life right now. You may expand or shrink your garden at different times in life, and that's totally okay. As always, I encourage you to grow a garden that you love and enjoy. I love being out here, especially at this time in the evening where it's cooling off, and just really enjoying everything that's growing. There are some pest problems. There's a few plants that I killed. There are a few more things that I wish were growing or growing better, but overall, I'm really loving and enjoying my garden, and we're eating an abundance from it. And I'm always learning something new from gardening as well. So I hope that this inspires you and encourages you to enjoy your garden and enjoy where you're at in your gardening journey. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned something or were just encouraged in your gardening journey, I would really appreciate if you went to our website, theheirloomfarmer.com, and subscribe to our email list. When you do, I will send you our free homesteading guide, and I will send you emails every week sharing more with you. Like last week, I sent out my 3 favorite salad dressing recipes. And being on our list is also the best way to support our family farm and these videos. So please go to our website and subscribe. I really, really appreciate that. I would also love to hear about your gardens and meet you all. And I would love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know what's going on in your garden, what you are harvesting and enjoying about your garden most this year. And last thing, if you are seeing this video this week on July 12th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., we will have a native and perennial plant sale here at the Heirloom Farmer. I would love to see you there and meet you and even give you a personal tour of my garden. So that will be July 12th from 9 to noon, I should say July 12th, 2025, from 9 a.m. to noon at the Heirloom Farmer. And again, you can get our information by going to our website, theheirloomfarmer.com. I'd love to see you there. We're gonna have a lot of beautiful plants like the bee balm that I showed you at the beginning. All right, thank you for joining me this evening, and God bless.